What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy show with me, your host, Tara Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, June 10th. I am live taking your questions. We've got another NBA game this week conflicting here. So we will keep it about 30 minutes or so. I will stop it at tip-off so we don't have to conflict. 35, got time for the national anthem and whatnot. So whenever it starts, we will end here. But in the meantime, I'm taking your questions live, and we got a lot of topics to cover, to be honest here. We've been having arrest news every single week, and while we did get arrest news, it was thankfully not from any of the fantasy players. So, good Lord. I just wish that people could, stay out of trouble and not get arrested. Offensive linemen and such now, but we're good. We did get an offensive lineman retire. We'll talk about that here. We've got injury stuff to recover. We're going to look at players. I got some mailbag questions, so we are going to go ahead and dive in here. All right. I'm going to start us off here. I'm going to start us off with news, but also mailbag as well. Here, we're going to talk about Cam Skattebo, who news-wise did actually show up and is participating in OTAs now, little mini camp action there, which is fantastic. I removed my banner so you guys can see Cam's lovely face there, since it is an upside down picture as he likes to flip. But let's talk about it here because it was looking a little sketchy there for a second in terms of recovery. And I know in terms of injuries, people get very scared when it comes to ankles because those are not often as straightforward as an ACL. You feel a little bit more comfortable knowing what is coming from an ACL. And sometimes, the ankles going sideways and such can make you a little nervous. But he's out there. Now, again, he's not out there with pads and whatnot, but seeing him in drills is the key. We talked about this last week. When talking about guys like Quinshon Judkins being on the field, active, running drills, cutting and whatnot. That's the key there, right? Because we're not expecting, they're not in full pads, right? But it gives us a good indication of how comfortable they are with their body and movement right now. And it's a pretty good indicator. If they're participating in early June in OTAs, pretty good indicator that, they're going to be on track to be ready for the beginning of the season. So that is fantastic because Cam was the one that I was kind of looking at. I was feeling very good about Quinshon. Cam was the one that I was looking at, and I was just a little bit nervous, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just a lot going on there. And we do have change in regime there, new offensive coordinator who you guys know that I can't stand, in Matt Nagy, but he's not necessarily a terrorist for running backs in particular. So we should more than likely philosophically see this team try to lean on the ground game. So question here, how is Cam Skattebo not a fade? Rough ankle injury. Doesn't make sense that he'll be himself this year. Tracy is the better late round target. I would not say that I don't have beef with Tyrone Tracy Jr., but I do have a very definitive stance on Tyrone Tracy Jr. Now, I do think it makes sense that if we're talking about who will serve as a supplemental change of pace-ish back alongside Cam Skattebo, Tracy would be the guy, right? We know Devin Singletary is a well-rounded back. He can be a 3-down back. He pass catches fine. Not an issue. He blocks fine. No problems there. But when it comes down to those two, we do know that more than likely it'll lean a little bit towards Tracy being the one that would play off of Cam Skattebo. But it is important to note that we did see plenty of them together last season while Skattebo was healthy. And Skattebo flat out took that job. And the more concerning part of that and why I'm not really in on Tyrone Tracy as the better late round target, because I would never feel comfortable with him on a weekly basis, rolling him out alongside Skattebo. Because even if you do think that he will be less efficient coming off of the injury, take a little bit more time, a few months or so until he's up to 100% of himself, Tracy would never see the vast majority of the workload. And the problem also is that he's not an ideal handcuff, right? If I'm looking for a handcuff, I want a guy like a Tyler Algier. That's a handcuff, right? I would want a Tank Bigsby. That's a handcuff, right? Guys that I know for sure would step into 3-down logical work, right? Tyron Tracy is not a handcuff in that traditional sense because as we saw last year when Cam Skattebo went down, you could technically not rely on Tyron Tracy on a weekly basis to have the bulk of the carries over Devin Singletary. He was still a very critical part of the offense. There were multiple weeks where Devin Singletary just flat out outperformed Tyrone Tracy, especially with the additional usage in terms of him having the goal line preference as well. So if you're not going to be involved enough, because it's not going to be realistically, we're not going to get Cam Skattebo, Tyrone Tracy Jr. committee, right? Even if he is slowly ramped up, it's not going to be enough valuable work that we would feel super comfortable with it. And then you know that he is not a 3-down back that is going to come into a massive workload, right? It's still going to be low-end RB2 territory. Is that really the upside that you're trying to shoot for, right? Versus saying I want a Brian Robinson that would go into a significant workload if Bijan were to go down, right? So no, Tracy is not particularly a target for me in any way, shape, or form. I feel comfortable with Cam Skattebo at his ADP, and again, it's very good that we see him out there on the field running drills right now. That is very critical. And we saw this man just flat out beat out Tyrone Tracy. And more importantly, again, what I was trying to get to before I got a little bit sidetracked on Singletary and Tyrone Tracy, Cam Skattebo didn't just take early down work. Cam Skattebo took receptions. He was a 3-down back, and he was productive with said receptions that he took. And that is critical because obviously Tracy is a natural receiver there. So no, we may perhaps we're looking at we get to week 1 and the Giants don't want to overload right away, and they've got him out there 50% of snaps or so, and they're using Tracy and Singletary as supplements, just to do a little bit of a ramp up there. But overall, once we get into the bulk of the season, if Cam Skattebo is healthy and on the field, he will be the workhorse running back. So yeah, and at an ADP here that is hovering around just a little bit over RB20. Let me see if I have my rankings up. Not my rankings, just consensus rankings that we can look at real quick. Because I want to say it's RB20-ish, but I want to get the exact number for you guys. And maybe it has shifted too since we did see him return. We'll see if he's moved up a little bit. Yeah, RB20, right on the dot there. And it's honestly, it can't move up. I would anticipate that maybe the highest it could move up is to above a Travis Etienne because people have a lot of skepticisms around Travis Etienne, but overall, RB20 is probably the sweet spot where he is going to stay for the remainder of the time period. So, and heading through draft season. So it's still very good value on a guy that we know the Giants want to be run heavy. We know that, again, I don't love the offensive coordinator, but there's not a massive problem from a run game perspective. And we know that he is factually already beat out people on roster and is the RB1. So it's not that dramatic there. Looking at the chat here, guys, because I was yapping, I wasn't looking at the chat. Jump to the chat here from Donald Glaspie. Hey, CHIC, Chicago. Is that Chicago from, I don't know what that acronym is, but greetings from Yosemite. What's up? From Kevin Zad, Spurs tonight. I hope so. I'm in Texas, guys, and I'm not a native born Texan. And obviously not native to Houston then if I'm not a native Texan, logically. But I have not adapted. I've been here 15 years. I'm not going to lie. I've not adapted to being a Houston fan of anything. I'm not going to BS. And I far prefer the Spurs. So I am pro Spurs. I really do hope they win tonight. Sorry, Houston people. I've never adapted. I mean, I'll speak positively of the Texans and whatnot. Can't say that I care much for the Astros, but I have not adapted to Houston sports. I still hold my original loyalties there. Chavez, girls in the chat says Tara is the best. Thank you. Miles Logan says I'd be too scared to touch that Giants backfield. I hear you on that. I do. And I have come to, I was never a Cam Skattebo truther, right? I was skeptical of him coming into the NFL and how his game would translate to the NFL. But I liked what I saw last year. I can't deny that I did like it. There's always the concern that, Maybe touchdowns are potentially limited by the amount of times that Jackson Dart calls his own number. But logically, I would hope they try and lean more now with Cam Skattebo healthy and hopefully playing an entire year, lean more on him at the goal line to try and alleviate some of that aggressive head first running that Jackson Dart tends to do. So, and I feel, and there are positives to look forward to. Their offensive line is heading in a positive direction. Okay, they've drafted well for the things that they needed in particular. Defense is heading in a positive direction. Traded away some stuff, but overall should be competitive-ish. Not super competitive. We're pushing for a playoff, but competitive enough to where they're not abandoning the run. And again, he was involved in the pass game pretty good and was successful with it. Yards after the catch there. For sure. From C11P says, Tara, your Rush shirt lettering is both ultra timing and top tier. Are you a Rush fan? I'm not. This is actually, it is themed Rush for the Scott Fish Bowl. This was maybe 4 years ago t-shirt. You get a t-shirt every single year for the event. And I love wearing my t-shirts religiously. So I do think that this one was, because it was the music themed one. So yes, that is what it's themed after, but it is a fantasy football shirt for the Scott Fish Bowl charity tournament there, which I am drafting in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Yeah, we're closing in on it. I think I got like 3 weekends before I draft. So I'm going to film some stuff at the live draft and come back to you guys with that. It's going to be fun. I'm excited. And the scoring got released on it a little bit ago. There's lots of fun bonuses, crazy bonuses here. I've already imagined like my perfect quarterbacks in this draft. It's super flex. So I'm very excited. So live draft in 2-3-ish weeks. It's going to be fun. Linda Wells says Skattebo already has CE, and I shouldn't laugh at that, but I mean, I think it's appropriate to laugh at that, right? I feel would he laugh at it? I don't know. Would he understand it? I don't know. Skattebo already has CTE and has ankle and leg injuries in the past. He will be ready to go for the upcoming season. Problem is Jackson Trump. That is a hilarious comment. I'm with you. Of the two, Skattebo is the one that I trust the most, honestly. And you're right. Technically speaking, can concussions really come for him? I don't know. Joking, but if he's on the field, he'll be ready to go. Trust him more. It is Jackson Dart that is the one that worries me. The ADP. Now I will say this because I think we talked about Malik. Did we talk about Malik Neighbors last week? I believe we did. Malik Neighbors, if we did not talk about it last week, was filmed at a charity event looking like he was hobbling very gingerly. Now, was he hobbling? Was he just kind of, moving a little slow? I don't know. But we are kind of skeptical, and it does feel like we've got more of an ambiguous timeline with him. So we're talking about Jackson Dart with potentially Malik Neighbors maybe starting on the pup, maybe being a bit delayed because he did have that second surgery there. And so the timeline is a little sketchy. And, from what I'm seeing from injury analysts, it seems like the more realistic timeline would be like an October look there and perhaps some slow ramp up. So we would be talking about, again, which is also, did we talk about Isaiah Likely last week? We might have talked about Isaiah Likely, which is also why I do like Isaiah Likely a lot, because there's a possibility that Isaiah Likely, and again, Matt Nagy is not a negative for tight ends, that Isaiah Likely could be the guy that ends up being the most productive fantasy asset at the beginning of the season as a pass catcher, because the competition there as the secondary and third options at wide receiver are interesting. It's Darnell Mooney, who I love, but I won't lie, last year was nasty. And he was kind of playing through some injuries at some point, but really overall, and quarterback issues, obviously, but it was underwhelming. And then Malachi Fields was drafted. I don't love him as a prospect for a high upside from a fantasy perspective. And then Darius Slayton is obviously still there. And we know how we all feel about Darius Slayton's upside. It's not really, ask any Giants fan about how they feel about Darius Slayton there. So it's a sketchy situation to be looking at drafting Jackson Dart. He did end up dropping a little bit in ADP, but not enough to my liking. I can't advise taking him over. Let's look at rankings right now. But off the top of my head, I can't. Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes, who again is at OTAs, theoretically should be ready for week 1. We still got to see how Bo Nix is looking, but theoretically should be ready. But we'll see on him. Need more information. Matt Stafford, Jared Goff. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Not happening there, right? And then jumping to the chat here again from Loving Life 748 says, what the heck is up with Odell, Juju, and Barrios moves? A sign of questionable coaching, to be honest. I don't mean to insult Harbaugh, but at the end of the day, he is not in charge of the offense. So, but and I mean, that's really you could also say that's management making that decision. And we all know how we feel about the Giants GM, who continues to get his, extensions and whatnot, despite questionable results there. But at the end of the day, yeah, like I saw a video of a bomb to Odell, and everyone's like, Odell's back. No, man, I'm sorry. And Juju looks cooked. Barrios is Barrios, right? God, what a nightmare, right? So I'm not feeling it there. And I agree with you. Love and Life, Diggs would have been the better move there. I agree. I actually had an interesting comment that I saw regarding Diggs potential, and this is not like a rumor or anything, but someone saying that Diggs over Brandon Aiyuk would be the better move for Washington if they're looking to add a receiver. And I completely agree with that. I mean, Diggs is old, obviously, right? But the man came off an ACL and played a full season. That is a miracle in itself. So, and before that, when he was in Houston, before the injury, he was not cooked in any way, shape, or form. I mean, he wasn't traditional Stephon Diggs, but he was performing at a very fine level, right? So, yeah, I mean, he got handled 100 targets last season. That would be the better move, in my opinion. Perhaps he's waiting on, I would think money's not a concern. The man's had contracts on contracts, but, I mean, he does have expenses, as we see. So I would say that it would have been the better move. It'll be interesting to see where Diggs lands. But, yeah, I think he's still got a little bit more left in him. Yep, and leaving that is the Fishbowl Rush t-shirt. Let's see here. La Eliza says, as a Giants fan, I'm loving all the Giants talk. Yeah, we got into a nice Giants flow here. It's taken up the vast majority of the but it's fine because I mean we've got assets on top of assets that are critical from a fantasy perspective, right? But as a Giants fan, you're loving the Giants talk. I know how you feel about Malachi, but I really think he's going to have an Ibuka moment this season. Possibly. And it's not that I didn't I don't like him from my fantasy perspective and as a didn't love him as a prospect because and I'm not one to be obsessed with speed, right? But I do get a little bit worrisome about the guys that are heavily contested catch guys and how that can translate to the NFL. Because again, you're playing against the next level. Now, granted, they played plenty of competition in college, right? That team did, but it's the next level, right? So I get worried about the contested catch guys not translating like a Xavier Legette, right? There's just a level of translation that doesn't happen there. Keon Coleman, right? So if you're a contested catch guy, I want a little bit of speed there for you just to justify it. And it makes me a little bit uncomfortable there. I like more of a, my prospects were guys I would prefer a Denzel Boston to compare to a Malachi Fields, right? But we'll see. I mean, the good thing for him is that he fell into a perfect situation to have opportunities. Logically, I mean, I would prefer to get him out on the field versus a Darius Slayton, right? Because again, you got to develop young talent instead of leaning on proven guys that are proven to be not super reliable there. Michael Alvin says, any word on Bill? No, not really. I see the most ridiculous amounts of videos of Rachaad White catching passes there, but no, sadly, no real hype right now. But no hype is not a bad thing, right? No hype is not a terrible thing. So we're still holding our fingers there. And there's been no major ADP movement. So he's a very good value pick there. My dog barking in my ear, indicating someone is coming home. Very good value pick there. So that's still good, right? Still good. Let's see here. Leaving says, second Eagles wide receiver always disappoints. You know what? Let's go. Did I have no, I don't think I have a mailbag on, no, shoot. But I did want to discuss, Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and Malachi Fields, and also Eli Stowers, who I saw a little note there out of training camp that we had. Let's talk about the Eagles here. That we had not having excellent participation from, oh gosh, sorry, I hear a doorbell. Hopefully someone goes and gets that. We're not having excellent participation from Eli Stowers, which is interesting because of the level upside that Dallas Goedert had last season. When we're looking at, I mean, he turned into, and he's always obviously been there from a fantasy perspective, but yeah, and leaving, I just saw your comment pop up there saying that Goddard's ranking is pretty low, punt on tight end value. I think so. My only fear with Goedert has been, at what point do we see Eli Stowers shift in? But perhaps maybe we're getting a little bit too, or putting the cart ahead of the horse, right? Because and it's not like we haven't done this before, right? The tight end, when there's an incumbent, doesn't always initially upend, right? It takes some time. We saw, as crazy talented as Colson Loveland is, right? It took some time and effort for him to work his way into that rotation late in the season there. And I would hate to step over really good production from Goedert just because we're worrying about at what point we're actually going to see. Oh my gosh, why is this dog still barking? Give me 1 second. I don't know if you guys can hear, but I suspect there's something going on here. All right. Hopefully I texted someone to go handle this dog that is driving me crazy, barking in my ear. But again, so when I'm looking at Dallas Goedert, I agree. The ranking is very low. What is it right now? I mean, he is at tight end 13. So he's at tight end 13. It's probably a little bit higher than I would like. I prefer to take an Isaiah Likely over him, right? But I think it's right around the appropriate area. It's late enough, not a major issue. When we're looking at this transition to this new look Eagles receiving core, are we going to see, obviously Devontae Smith has no problem catching touchdowns, right? But he's not I wouldn't rely on him as a massive contested catch guy once they get into the red zone, right? And really Mekhi Lemon, that's not really a major part of his game as well. So logically, all of that massive touchdown increase that we did see to Dallas Goedert last season can very easily translate to continuing on this season, especially with the exit of A.J. Brown there. So yeah, that's a really good one for us to look at as we're sitting here, like trying to figure out, like, how much do we trust Devontae Smith? How high are we pushing him? Do we trust Mekhi Lemon to make an impact right off the bat? I mean, yeah, he's going to be the wide receiver too that gets on the field, right? It's just a matter of how productive he can be, how successful he can be, and how much volume we are actually getting pushed through the air, or are they tilting back aggressively towards Saquon Barkley, which is what I think is going to happen. I'm in for a massive Saquon Barkley bounce back season. Because last year was it was still good volume, right? But it was a lot lower than should have been. So that one I think is very, very interesting. Jumping to the chat here. As we're on the subject, let me bring those up. Famous Jay says Goddard or Andrews. I would go Goddard. Yeah. Because it's weird because obviously with Andrews, we know, and I expected them to make a more significant addition, or a significant addition at tight end. To leave Andrews bare there was a little bit weird because I do feel like he is on the downturn there in terms of overall production. But when I'm looking at him versus the upside of Dallas Goedert at the very least, while he is an injury risk, and so is Andrews, right? But Goedert at the very least, I know that when he is on the field, he's not cooked at this point. We're still going to get pretty significant production out of him as long as he is on the field operating as the tight end one. I can't say the same thing about Andrews. And whereas the exit of A.J. Brown and the addition of Mekhi Lemon kind of balances out and probably leaves a little bit more on the table for Dallas Goedert in terms of opportunities getting an uptick there. I can't, and they've added Hollywood Brown and Dontavian Wicks. Those are not really threats, right? But at the end of the day, when I'm looking at Mark Andrews and the additions there, I actually like the additions that the Ravens made a lot at wide receiver. I think that either one of those young rookies, my preference is, but they're both very talented, but my preference is Jacoby Lane. I always liked him a lot as a prospect. But either way, they've got some new bodies that are pushing in there. We've obviously got the shift in offensive scheme here. So I would not be shocked if we see the Ravens shift more towards an increase in, I think they'll still run plenty of 2 tight end sets, but with the exit of Likely, I wouldn't be shocked if we see them shoot a little bit more towards 11 personnel and really rely on those rookie wide receivers there. So yeah, my preference there is Goddard, just for the higher upside option. And yeah, at some point, as Michael Albin says, Stowers and Claire are on your scout team. At some point, I would think that we would see Stowers in there, potentially working his way into being the heir apparent, because obviously this is the last year for Dallas Goedert, right? The final year of his contract, and they can always extend him for another year, right? But as they did. But at the end of the day, I do think that Stowers is the future, but let's not step over value. Let's not step over value for Goddard here. Famous J says, I think Stowers is being rated too low. Goddard was on the trade block last year. A trade can still happen. It could. But I would think it would maybe happen more likely if AJ Brown was there. Getting rid of, for a team that still has prime Super Bowl aspirations, leaving Devontae is the only veteran pass catcher, really. And again, they got Hollywood and Dontavian Wicks, but I have no belief in either one of them, right? But primary in terms of starters, right? Leaving Devontae Smith as the main veteran, the only veteran there, and relying heavily on multiple rookies feels a little bit risky there. So I do think they'll keep Goddard and then potentially move on there. And then Loving Life says, thoughts on Lemon as the Eagles wide receiver too. I don't love his ADP I don't hate his ADP right now, or his ranking right now. His ranking was, and I was just looking at it. He is wide receiver, scroll down. Wide receiver 30. Oh, where is he? 39. That's right. He's wide receiver 39. That's behind guys like Chris Godwin, Michael Wilson, Jordan Tyson, Brian Thomas Jr., Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't mind taking a chance on him over a lot of those guys, obviously outside of like a Jordan Tyson and maybe Michael Wilson, depending on how we see things shaping out during training camp and preseason in terms of his usage. But at the end of the day, I do think he's the solid second look on that offense. But do I think that we're going to see a massive change in terms of what we saw last year, which was AJ Brown's gripe of that he's had really for a couple seasons now, right? Since they added Saquon Barkley, is that the pass volume is inconsistent. I don't think that's going to change. And I don't think that's a negative on Jalen Hurts. I think this team won a Super Bowl leaning on the back of Saquon Barkley. I think they will go back to leaning on Saquon Barkley. So the volume will be there in terms of him being a wide receiver too. But it might be a season where he doesn't cross over, 100 targets, a little bit less volume, maybe not a lot of touchdown opportunities there. So it's okay, but I don't know if it's going to be a massive upside pick. But for the value, I'm not passing over it, right? But I do like a lot of guys after him, though. So that's maybe the only caveat. Like I like a Parker Washington. I like obviously you guys know I love Quentin Johnston, right? There's guys like Josh Downs. So you can maybe get just as good value with a little bit higher upside by waiting a little bit. So not a terrible pick, not my favorite in that range. I feel like that was the most wishy-washy answer ever. So not a fade. Ranking is okay. But at the end of the day, I prefer other options in that range. Yeah, that's a good way to package it up there for sure. Jumping back here to the chat, Michael Allman says, should we be picking tight ends for our flex? Seems like a lot of them might be getting 8+ targets a game moving forward. It's not a bad option. I mean, obviously in tight end premium, for sure, we're heading in that direction there. But there is good depth for sure. And depending on, and I used to be very pro, no, I'm just rostering one tight end and then I'm streaming. But for the fact that we have so many, and obviously as we keep playing fantasy, our benches are getting deeper, right? And the fact that we have so many deep assets that you could draft as just backup stash on your bench, I'm pro not particularly drafting two higher end tight ends, just because that unfortunately makes things a little bit wonky for you at other positions. It occasionally can work out, if it's a tight end premium league, but for the most part, from what I've seen, when people double up on tight end, it makes it a little bit uncomfortable at one other position. That position is often running back. So you're rolling out two guys, but you're looking at your RB1 as a um, as a David Montgomery or something like that, and you're just lacking a little bit of upside and it doesn't work out. My preference would be, yeah, I'm comfortable with rostering multiple tight ends, but I'm never going to intend right off the bat for one to be my flex option. I want to draft a high-end tight end and then wait for a late guy to stash on my bench that I have a lot of high hopes for. And you can go late, guys. Don't be scared to go late. Last year, my late guy was a Rondé Gadsden. So, I forget your name, as the other user was talking about. Stowers is very cost effective. So it hurts nothing at all for you to grab, stash, and wait for it to hit. And then you can roll out these tight ends as flex options. I see a lot of that as we get towards the mid-season there, because you're picking up some of these guys off waivers because they are really strong options. And you are, in fact, ending up with multiple tight ends there. So, yeah, I mean, there's I don't love, looking at rookies, obviously. Stowers would be my preference. I don't love Kenyon Sadiq for the unfortunate fact of that he is dealing with an injury, so he will miss valuable training camp time. And obviously, we know that there is sketchy quarterback potential to maybe be good, but also maybe to be very bad over there. But guys like, oh my gosh. Speaking of Washington, actually, let's go to this other mailbag question here regarding Terry McLaurin here. So I can pivot to talking about Chig Okonkwo. At training camp, Chig is very present at OTAs for Washington. And volume has been underwhelming for Chig in the past at Tennessee, but don't hold that against him. I really think that was more of a function of Washington's offense, right? Not an indicator, Tennessee's offense, not an indication of the talent level. Chig's got it. He just needs to get into a system that can make him one of the top looks in the offense. And realistically, the offense is just Terry McLaurin in terms of pass catchers there. Like Terry McLaurin, I think that's why we're seeing a lot of Rachaad White catching passes in OTAs as well, because this also could be a weird situation where they might have to rely on Rachaad White as a pass catcher if they're very limited. Obviously, from a Clemson perspective, Antonio Williams was drafted. I have high hopes for him, but I have hopes for him. I won't say they're high. I have hopes for him to maybe be the wide receiver 2 in that offense. But outside of that, what are we really looking at? De'Ami Brown was outed. Have we, hey, we've rolled out De'Ami Brown in some good times, honestly. Actually, De'Ami Brown had some good times, but not great times, right? So at the end of the day, offense, we've got Terry McLaurin, as this question says right here. I will read it for everybody on the podcast. Thoughts on Terry McLaurin? I'm not hearing a ton of talk about him. Jaden Daniels, healthy, no other strong options. Maybe Brandon Aiyuk added. Question mark there on that one. Yeah, I don't feel very positively about Brandon Aiyuk. I was going to do more news, but we got some good questions here. We just started rolling, so I'm keeping on these questions here, and then you guys in the chat. I am very skeptical of Brandon Aiyuk. There's been a lot of yapping going on in the media, and the more he yaps, the worse I think it is for him, because there's really only one location that seems to express any kind of remote interest. And he is a talented wide receiver, so he'll get opportunities, but he would not be the first wide receiver that is very talented that we have seen fall to the wayside with interpersonal issues with a team, right? It has happened before. Just because you were producing at a high level does not mean that is sustained. There are guys that just flat out fall off, and it happens, right? And looking at Brandon Aiyuk, we don't hear a lot of chatter of a lot of teams that are trying to get him, right? Because at the end of the day, he was coming off an injury. We never actually saw him play. This is the second time that he has had conflict with the 49ers. This is not new, right? He sat out, was irritated, whining, crying. and got his contract, right? And then produced absolutely nothing. So it's really kind of a sketchy situation. And obviously no one is going to trade for him because nobody that's not desirable. They're waiting for him to get cut in order to grab him. And Washington obviously is the location where it seems like he wants to go. It seems like Jaden Daniels wants him. But at the end of the day, how much confidence do we have that at this point he can step on the field and really be something? Or once you sit out this long, have you simply just lost a step and it's difficult for you to recover, right? So that's the question there. And also, the more he yaps in public, the less inclined the 49ers are to do anything. The 49ers will have to make a move. And at this point, it's probably a desire to be petty back to him. And I kind of don't blame them on that one. Usually I don't like these kind of moves by the organizations, but I mean, they gave the man the money and he then got injured and then apparently got mad again and decided to not show up even though he had the money. I don't really understand it, right? But wide receivers, who understands them? But at the end of the day, when we're looking at him potentially going here to Washington, I'm skeptical of it. So I am looking at other guys in the offense, but at the end, but really, let me not say at the end of the day again, but really the key here, aside from my love that I have for Chig Okonkwo being an excellent late round target at tight end 20, Terry McLaurin is a guy that is being undervalued. And I understand why, right? Because the Washington offense looked bad last season. Terry didn't look bad that season. Quite frankly, Terry didn't look good last season, in my opinion, because he was having those contract issues. And it's just a recipe for disaster when you sit out all the way up until the season. Because despite your best intentions and people saying, well, no, he's a professional, he'll prepare, outside of the field. No, man, it doesn't work. It's a risk. So I would not be shocked. I don't think it was him being, aging up or being cooked. I think it was just an unfortunate combination of poor overall offensive play, injuries to Jaden Daniels, subpar play in second year, regression from Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin not participating in training camp or preseason. Just a bad combination there, right? Bad offensive line. It was just bad, right? So higher hopes for him this season, higher aspirations for him, and good value for him, because at no point is he going to start shooting up there into the range where we're drafting even like who would be like a George Pickens, right? It's not, I mean, he'd never jump up that, or an AJ Brown. He's not even going to jump up to the level that AJ Brown is at. So realistically, a good pick there for him, going under the radar a little bit. And we know that prior to last year, when Jaden Daniels was in his rookie season and on fire, the connection that he had to Terry McLaurin was elite. And that is the only built-in connection that they have right now, unless they add in Brandon Aiyuk. But really and truly, what kind of connection has remained overall this time? Brandon Ayuk's been in the league for a while, right? We cannot rely on a connection from college from years ago, right? Jumping here to the comments from Linda Wells. Really hate that you talk about the Eagles because I'm a Chiefs fan, but the defensive special teams value should be very reasonable. I think so as well. They're very, and then, it was an up and down season defensively for them as well. It's just a weird season overall. So I do think we'll see a little bit of a bounce back there. Easy E said, just dropped in again before the Spurs and Knicks game to say hi and turn off that dang mind reading device of yours. Nope, I can't turn it off there. And that was a good little warning time because I do see the starting lineups out there right now. So we'll start to wrap things up here. I will finish up these chats here real quick. Michael Alban says, Bears OC last year used 2 tight end sets. Now he's with the Ravens. He did. But my fear isn't that he won't use 2 tight end sets. It's that, and also, he could. My fear isn't that he won't use 2 tight end sets. It's that will he have the personnel to fit 2 tight end sets now with likely gone and them not making the big addition that we thought. Like we thought that David Njoku, because he kept visiting, that he was going to go there. If that was the case, then we're like, But it is just Mark Andrews there now, really and truly, in theory. And who is I don't even, actually, let's look at real quick here. Ravens depth chart. Who is behind him now? No. It is Durham Smythe. I would never have guessed that. I'm glad that I looked. Durham Smythe is there. So, I mean, he's okay from a blocking perspective, so he can. But even then, so I think the majority of the targets should tilt back to the receiving core. So, yeah, I do think we're going to see continued leaning on those upside for the rookies there. Michael Albin says another year of Saquon, please. I think it's a bounce back for him for sure. Leaving says rookie tight end learning curve is pretty steep. Fannin might be the exception. Pitts took 4 seasons to be fantasy relevant. I give Pitts a slight pass because he did have some less than ideal quarterback situations to deal. Not the worst, right? I mean, like when I look at bad quarterback situations, he did not have to deal with the most destitute, but you know, he had to go through some stuff. It's funny because like when we think about it, like I was literally looking at it last season and I was like, oh, or looking at last season's stats and I was like, oh my God, it was Kirk Cousins that made Kyle Pitts pop at the end of the season. Oh my God, we have no evidence of Michael Penix Jr. Really pushing Kyle Pitts up there. Yeah. So maybe we do want Tua to start for the sake of Kyle Pitts, because I know Tua can hit a tight end. I know that. I know Tua can hit a tight end. So that's funny. But good point there. It does, you know, we have such high expectations for our rookies right off the bat. Like, again, as I'm talking about Kenyon Sadiq, I'm not expecting a lot this season. He's not a prime. Like, might I have some stashes of him? Perhaps. But I'm not expecting a ton of him this season. I think we've gotten very used to, since, you know, we had like Sam Laporta popping off, Brock Bowers. I mean, we've been blessed. We've been spoiled with these rookie tight ends. But remember, Trey McBride was not a rookie hit. Tight ends used to take time. They used to take time to develop. You needed 3 or 4 years, right? So we've had these athletic phenoms coming in and making a difference right off the bat, but sometimes it does take a little while. So yeah, that's a pro Chig little support system there. It could be, it's very possible. Never write off tight ends because they didn't pop in the first 3 seasons, because, you know, we've been spoiled by these little rookie phenoms coming in here. Leaving here, Billy thing. His ADP is interesting in the summer. Yeah, I think so too. But I'm like, I want to see, right? My only fear with him, and I'm pro him. I'm in. I like him as a draft target, but I do want to see if they are interested in pushing Katron Allen a little bit, because that's where we can run into the wrench of where we were at last year with Chris Rodriguez pushing in there, and unfortunately, you know, making that backfield weird, right? To where he was taking goal line touches and stuff, and it was just ineffective. And anytime that Bill did get the vast majority of the work, he was successful. Like, if you give him 20 carries, 15 plus carries, he's going to do well. He'll pop off a big run. But again, I fear, because Katron Allen is a very similar player, right? Just short yardage guy, not going to catch, you know, could theoretically, you never know. I never fault players for not catching passes in college, particularly when they were paired with somebody who caught passes in committees, because it happens. It's not a big deal. Like, just because you didn't doesn't mean that you can. Kenneth Walker didn't catch, like, he caught like 2 passes in college, and now he catches plenty. It's not that deep. But it'll be interesting to see if they like Katron Allen on the ground. That's my only little bit of a fear there. That's it. But we'll see. But I feel good about Bill, especially because, again, the ADP is not rising, guys. His max is a low end RB3. So when I'm looking at like risks and stuff, like I don't care. That's not a deep, but like that's not an issue. Like, if I'm looking at, let's go ahead and wrap this up. But real quick, if I'm looking at Jacory, where are you at, Jacory? Oh, I'm not in the overall rankings. I want to see who is being drafted around Krosky Merritt. Okay. Right before him, well, a couple guys right before him that I like, obviously. Quentin Johnston, Kyler Murray, Jacory Krosky Merritt, Josh Downs. But then it gets to George Kittle, Rashad White, obviously. It's like mid-tier quarterback options like Jordan Love, again, Kyler Murray. Tight ends, you start to dip into the tight end, high-end tight end 2 area of Dallas Goedert and Isaiah Likely. Hail Mary running backs like Tracy, Jordan Mason, and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, you get into like a backup running back kind of committee kind of territory. It's fine. It's fine. Famous Jay says Aiyuk is becoming the less talented version of Terrell Owens. That's true. I have a funny TO story. I actually tried to get his autograph once when I was a kid, and probably like 16 or so. Maybe, yeah. 16, somewhere between 14 to 16. I'll have to try and remember the exact time frame. But I was trying to, he lived in Atlanta. It was not when he was playing with Atlanta, but he lived in Atlanta, and I saw him in the Buckhead Mall, and I was trying to get an autograph, me and my little brother, and we went up, and he like bolted away from us, and the mall was not crowded. It was me, him, and nobody else in the mall, and I'm just sitting there with like a pen and paper, like a habit, like, and he put his little security person in between us and bolted out the store, and I'm like, dang, he lost a fan. He lost 2 fans that day. Lame. So lame. So that's my little TO story. Linda Wells. Yeah, and that's when the wheels started to come off. And I was like, yeah, that's karma, dude. Linda Wells. Diggs might be the location for Washington. Think about it if they have the salary cap from Diggs. Yeah. And Diggs is from the DMV. Yeah, I think that would be my preference. I think that's a very logical landing spot for him. I think it would work well. And I think he gets along, for what it's worth, as much as, occasionally his drama can be off the field. It's not as if he causes drama. Well, unless he feels unhappy about targets, occasionally he does feel a certain type of way, but those are behind him, right? He's accepted. He's past that point of his career. So I don't think there's like any risk of him being like a toxic teammate anymore, right? Donald has a good comment here. Donald Gillespie says, how about Dear Miss Fantasy Football League? I'll think about it. I'm a terrible commissioner. That's the only caveat why I've never done it, but I'll consider it. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe I'll find someone to be a co-commissioner there and help me out. And then Leaving says, with the giant horse statue by the pool for the TO story. I don't remember because I didn't go to the mall a lot because I'm not from Atlanta. I'm from outside of Atlanta, literally an hour and a half away, but we would go there occasionally because my mom loved she loved just going to, was that Buckhead Mall? Not the Lenox Mall, whatever. Anyway, she loved going to, because we didn't really have a big mall in South Carolina that we could go to. So we would go to Atlanta for the mall and to Commerce, Georgia for the outlets. Little more about me, FYIs. Famous Jay says, I see Diggs in Philly. Maybe. Would be a good presence for them to add. Especially if he wanted to, well, he doesn't, if he wants to chase a Super Bowl, not the worst place to go, but I could see that as a potential one. But we're gonna wrap things up, people. I appreciate you joining in. We had one more mailbag question, but we will save that for next week. Thank you so much, because I see the game tipped off, so I will let everyone go now. Appreciate you all tuning in. As a reminder, this is the Dear Miss Fantasy podcast, available on all podcast platforms. Appreciate a subscription, and the support for that would be wonderful. And also for my YouTube channel, it's Tara Time as well. And then shout out to our sponsor here. Well, not sponsor, our podcast owner, and player profiler there as well. If you want to check out all the wonderful content on Player Profiler as well. And also, if you want any packages, I never promote this. If you want any of the packages on Player Profiler, you can always get 25% off with the promo code Tara, just TERA. So yeah, if you want to take advantage of that and all the awesome tools over there. But outside of that, I appreciate you all. I will be with you next week. We'll see how this NBA Finals goes. I don't know when the Game 7 would be. I did not look that up. I wonder if it conflicts. It better not. But, hey, we got to get there before that even happens. So cross fingers. But regardless, I appreciate you all tuning in. I will see you next week. Same time, same place. Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST. Have a fantastic end to your week, guys. I will talk to you later.